Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
Welcome back to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. Today we have two co-founders of Revolution Cycles Dubai and Cycle Safe Dubai, Nicholas Brooks on my left and Stewart Howison on his left.
Thank you.
Our guests today have played a major role in moulding the biking community in the UAE. They're, as I said, they're co-founders of Revolution Cycles, which is a very popular bike store and community, and also the Cycle Safe Dubai, which is a non-for-profit they launched over 10 years ago to provide safe space for cyclists to pursue their passion in the UAE and particularly in Dubai. Welcome both.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thanks for joining us. Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit more about the background to both entities? I'll start with you, Stewart.
So Cycle Safe Dubai started, I think we're looking about 14 years ago now. I moved to Dubai. I was involved in media and radio prior to moving to Dubai. And one of the biggest things I was struggling with was to try and find a nice, safe place to ride. As you know, 14 years ago, the roads were just main infrastructure roads. There wasn't many back roads for us to use. And I was introduced to my good mate, Nick, by a mutual friend. I've got an Aussie mate who's an avid cyclist. Maybe you two should hook up. Yeah, we got together, planned a couple of rides together. And we just found that we needed to find a place where we can get more people involved in the sport that we're both passionate about. I mean, I grew up racing my bike since the age of 8, 9 years old. So coming from background in South Africa, you've got plenty of country roads you can go off and ride in. So Nick and I went out, found a little area out in the middle of nowhere, as it was then. And we put up a little Facebook group, Cycle Safe Dubai. First week we had 4 or 5 members or riders with us. Then it was 10 and 20 and 40 and 60 and 80. And next thing the group's at sort of 8 to 10,000. And yeah, we've just continued week on and week on, every Friday and every Saturday, providing an environment for people that are of ex-pro, ex-world champions to come and ride with us, to absolute beginners, finding a place to get on their bike and go for a ride and know that they're being looked after in one way or another.
Yeah. Interesting. And how did Revolution Cycles come into it then as well?
So Revolution Cycles came off as something that happened when what had happened was obviously we started this community and everybody's getting out and getting fitter, and we set up the Wednesday nights down at the Dubai Autodrome, train Yas in Abu Dhabi. And what happened was the natural progression is people are going, well, we're getting fit. What are we getting fit for? We need an event. We set up an event, and the second year of the event, we went to a couple of bike shops to try and get them involved as sponsors and partners with the event. And the one company just said, you know what, your event does so much for us already. Why do we need to spend any money? And we thought, you know what, that's kind of a really encased view of things, that you don't want it to grow the market. So I got hold of Nick and said, you know what, let's look at this. Let's look at opening a bike shop that can self-perpetuate as a bike store, but can also reinvest back into events and community and give something back to the community where, at that point, it was a very, very small industry. And 10 years ago, we started Revolution Cycles Dubai and just haven't looked back on it.
Okay, so 2007 was the cycle group and the Facebook group,
That's
and 2011 is the store and the kind of commercial part of it.
Correct.
As well, which and they're kind of separate, right? Like the non-for-profit, you don't have to pay for anything. It's for all levels. I've been part of it myself. I know that it's quite welcoming. To describe a scenario, people are asked to choose which pace they want to go. Correct. And they join the right group. So you're not going to be dropped quite early or anything like that. No. So that's sort of great. Do you have any sort of ideas of numbers in terms of, like, how many people were cycling in Dubai 14, 15 years ago versus how big the addressable market is today?
Sure.
I guess, I mean, for us, when we went looking for a group, I think the group that we sort of first rode in, and we'd both come out of, riding for clubs, or, Stu a little bit sort of more advanced than me. but we could ride a bike really well, plenty of experience. And so we ended up joining a group that you literally had to hang on. If you didn't hang on, you were left, and there was nothing there behind you to pick you up. And that was maybe 30, 40 people. There was a couple of other groups where you'd see single riders, but I guess that's what happened when we started up the group, that there was lots of people that had heard that actually we wouldn't leave them behind. There was a safety vehicle there. And the aspect was that it would follow the last rider, or one of us would follow the last rider. So, I mean, if it was a couple of hundred, I think you'd be a stretch. Back then. There's still lots of people that say, I've been riding here for 30 years. But they're very few. Whereas these days, there's so many people that if you don't ride, it's kind of unusual. Especially this pandemic as well.
So obviously, with a growing population and with an active population as well, sports can grow and the ecosystem around sports can grow. But what I'm trying to get at is the contrast between now and then, because as you said, there was expats coming to the region for many years. Did they not bring their bike? Did they not have anywhere to cycle? Why is this part of the world so different than anywhere else?
I think that was probably when, we'd been riding for maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 years out at Alcudra. And it was just a single lane road. I think back then, you can remember there was 3D sort of billboards of the hotels that they were going to put up there, and I think it was going to be similar to the Vegas Strip. It was going to be a busy road. But when we were riding there, it was before the bridge was even over the 611. So it was quiet. If you were going out there, it was just to maybe ride a horse or go to Babelsham. So there was very few cars. You'd have to make an effort to go down there, so you didn't. And I think that's when, we would regularly see His Highness Sheikh Mohammed coming back on a Friday morning or a Saturday morning in winter, generally from his sort of house that was out near the solar farm now. And he'd follow us for a number of kilometres and then sort of pull out, because then it was a single lane road, and then sort of hopscotch through the groups, because we had all the groups sort of paced out along the road.
He would be cycling or sometimes in his car?
No, he'd be always in his car. You could hear the car coming, that sort of G-Wagon.
G-Wagon.
And you would hear him behind you. And there was one morning where I think one of us waved him sort of through, because you could hear him. And he sort of sat there and then slowly sort of pulled out and, waved over for a chat. And that was the morning that Stewart rolled over to the window and he said, look, this is great. There's lots of cyclists out, but it's not safe with this many people out, and we need to do something about it. And that's the amazing thing about His Highness, that he has that vision of like, this is a great thing for the city, for the community, and for health. And wanted to build a cycling track, and it happened in
6 months. You could see the massive infrastructure that was being put down. We got involved with the RTA and the engineer's office just on advice and what's, from an end user's point of view, what's acceptable. They're asking, we want to build a bridge, or can you ride over this bridge that's at 6%? We're like, mate, there's not many hills in Dubai Desert, so if you give us a 15% gradient, we're gonna go for it. And it was just the vision. I think a lot of people look at it and go, but it's all about around the same time as Bradley Wiggins did so well in the Olympics and did so well at the Tour de France. It was before that. By the time Brad went off and did what he did, and cycling globally exploded, we already had a cycle track. We already had like 30, 40 Ks of cycling track out in the desert. So His Highness's vision was ahead of the time, as he is with most things. It's just, you can't quash that vision that he has.
It sounds collaborative as well, that and the planning around the track and the gradients as well sounds like that you guys were consulted.
But I guess you've got to have somebody in the right place that sees it. Like if it was in Australia, Europe, South Africa, it would have been held up in Parliament for months and kept someone in a job for months or years, and there would have been every excuse under the sun to hold it up. But the amazing thing about His Highness is that it needs to be done. there's a timeline. They're generally, when he asks for something, it's not just to sort of say, look, this could happen at any time.
Yeah.
There's a process and there's a need for it, and it gets done. And you don't worry about the sort of the small things. You figure it out, go around a gaff tree, and incorporate sort of the environment into it, and it gets done quickly.
And that's the Al Qudra story in terms of the track out there, which has been extended and extended again. And then now cycling is, of course, planned throughout the city. There's new developments announced in many different ways. So it seems to be an a evolving story of cycling integrated within Dubai. Do you feel part of that, or how do you, like, you do so many things now within the community? How have you seen it expand and grow?
Definitely feel part of it, because there's so many questions that are asked as to what do we think would work. And I mean, I've been down to Expo and working with the guys down at Expo 2020 to see how they can incorporate new tracks getting into there, and what's going to happen with the venue afterwards, and how we can incorporate more cycling to and from the destination. Because once Expo 2020 Dubai finishes, that structure and that area has to be incorporated into the city. So it's a case of talking about cycling routes that can get to and from there. What are the areas that we feel are really good key areas to use as mobility areas to bring cyclists to? Not just a case of us crazy guys and girls that go out and Fridays and Saturday morning go and ride 200 kilometers out in the desert. We want to use that track as a commuting. So it's a case of mom and dad want to use the bikes, and little Jane and Johnny want to use the bike to go to school. Maybe it's the gardener using his bike to go from one area to another. So definitely we're involved in
so many different things.
There's just, and it hasn't stopped, and it's just continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. When Nick was saying about when we first started, the size of the groups and that, not to take away from the UAE national cycling team, in those days were a phenomenal team and still are a fantastic team, and lots of feeders going into it. So there was definitely a disparity between the expat riders and local riders. So the local riders had strong clubs, but it was just they were riding somewhere else. We weren't riding with them. Now it's just all together. It's so
amazing.
good.
That's good to see. And so what were the kind of numbers over the years? Obviously a transient type city in one respect. Do you keep track of data on Cycle Safe Dubai members, and sort of how did the numbers look like, the groups?
Yeah, I think obviously the last couple of years, a lot of people unfortunately had to leave Dubai because of what we all went through. So the numbers sort of dropped, but it's weird, like there's always new riders coming through. So you hover around that sort of 400 type number. We built up to it really quickly. Obviously, with Emirates and the pilots, there's a lot of cyclists in amongst the pilots. And also, from a health perspective, they needed to do something for their fitness tests. And we actually ride with a few of the top medical guys at Emirates, Donata guys as well. So, we speak to them quite often about it, but now they've gone out to do their group. A lot of groups have come out of, getting together from CSD and gone off to do their group. So in one way, it's nice to at least, start off the foundation, and all these other groups come out of it and have inspired other groups to do it. Because I tell you what, to manage, let's say 2,000 people on a ride, it's just never going to happen. And so when you see these other groups out there, it's great. The whole thing for us is more about making sure that we're always trying to promote safe cycling. Be aware of the cyclist next to you, behind you, in front of you. Make sure that, at no point, Stewart and I mean, apart from speaking about it this morning, we're very quiet about, the involvement of what we had. It's more like, it wouldn't have happened without His Highness. So it's not like I walk around with a, crown on my head and sort of, tell people like I'm the sort of police for it. It's more about just making people aware, look, this is all our role to actually have safe cyclists. Make sure that new people don't get buzzed by sort of fast guys going past them, and just be aware that we have an amazing place, and thankfully Dubai is a very friendly city. So the idea is just to get every group to promote that safer cycling and that friendly sort of side of things.
Exactly. Like there's etiquette around how to cycle in groups so it's safe for everyone. Such as not listen to music. Obviously you have to wear a helmet and things like that. Yeah, it's very good. And
you can get stuck out there, sure, like one earphone in so you can listen with your outside ear. It's those little tips and tricks that sometimes a beginner doesn't know, and they go out there because they're riding by themselves and they have both earphones in, and you shout out to them numerous times, and then you go past and they get a wobble. It's not you going past as the first rider, it's that second, third or fourth person that's going past. And then also being the last wheel, shouting out, going last wheel, so that they know that there's no one else behind them. And it's going to be sort of quiet again.
And what about people who join cycling and then not join cycling, but they join groups like your group, and then they build up to races? And I know you guys are involved in the Spinnies Dubai 92 as well, which is a really good big event every year. Is that something that you've seen people kind of build up to and be able to cycle 92 kilometers around the city?
100%.
Well, it came out of Cycle Safe Dubai. You look at rides, and they're structured 35, 45, 65, 85 kilometre rides, and then 104. The whole thing was we then Stewart developed a race with his experience to set off the Spinnies.
And when did that start?
So we're in year 12 now. So this year will be the 12th year, which is in March. Obviously, with the pandemic, we had to move things around. We were delayed, and it was just. So now we've moved everything into March, which looks like it's going to be the right time of year, because we always found going into December and November time, there's holidays, then there's school breaks, and then, obviously for a ride like this, you need to have the numbers in order to theoretically inconvenience the city by closing down the road. So in order for us to gain that critical mass of numbers, we needed riders. So we went, well, you know what, we had to postpone December 2 years ago. We had it this year in I think it was in March. Yeah, it was March. And now next year's one will be in February, and we're going to try and keep it in the February calendar. It's a good time of year. Weather's perfect. Still got lots of tourism coming through. Expo's still on.
It's an incredible event. I'm lucky enough to take part in it a few years. And talking about Cycle Safe Dubai and the roads here in His Highness Vision, it's almost like a template for Saudi and for other places.
Oh yeah.
And also you mentioned the Expo, that last year's route did actually cycle around the Expo, which was a first look for many people on their bikes, which is quite, shows how integrated it is with the city as well.
And it's also, the first year I remember, with Stewart and the amount of time that he spent with, the brigadier and all the police and then the ambulances, and trying to explain, taking them over to South Africa to show them Cape Argus, just to show them, like, that's 35,000 people.
35,000 people
that do the event around.
For a cycling race, that's a big number.
It's the biggest timed cycling event in the world. They've gone up to numbers of 42,000.
Wow,
it's huge. Melbourne,
wow, that's almost as big as the London Marathon, which is the biggest, which is 40,000. Wow.
Melbourne have a big one, but you've got to cross the sort of heads, so you actually jump on a ferry mid-ride and cross over to the other side.
Great Strava segment.
So I'm just trying to figure out where I was going with this. The events.
Just talking, planning.
With the numbers and planning. So, and that was the thing that it's not just about CSD, it's not about the bike shop, Stewart's in many different departments, constantly just trying to, I guess, bring in all the various groups. So that first year was really interesting to have the police out there. And now this year, last year, I was riding with Andy Schleck, and he said, this is one of the most amazing races.
He's the famous
pro cyclist,
German?
Yep. No, he's from Liechtenstein, eh?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Technicality. But, he just sort of said, like, this is amazing. Like, you're closing down roads. He said this would never happen anywhere else. For just a community event and this big. And he just said, it's like, that's the thing that you see with the whole city, where you've got different departments, having their own parts. And the guys, the police force, are just such a well-oiled machine. They know exactly what's going on. There's road sort of closures. There's people directing traffic. I mean, it's a great ride to be part of. And if you are just getting into cycling, it's so much safer now than it was the first time, because everyone knows what's going on. And it's just that, you're right, it's a template for...
Amazing. And the fact that it's in March, people, if they start now, they've got a nice cool winter to build up to it. Very good. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about cycling as an industry, and from a, from a bicycle point of view and the brands, like what's involved in setting up a commercial entity, and what are the things you need to think about? And how has it happened for, say, Revolution Cycles in this city?
I think from a global standpoint, just looking at what's happened over the pandemic, it's kind of been the success and its own failure in the same way. You look at numbers, the numbers that are bouncing about is 400% increase over the pandemic.
Okay.
Now, for manufacturers, the big ones that manufacture all the components, like you've got your bike frame manufacturers, your Look, your Walia, and the Treks and the Giants and that, the manufacture the frames, but they need the components. They need the group sets, which is Shimano, your SRAM, your Colnago, your Campagnola. Now, them as a business model, they go, well, we need 10,000 group sets for the frames that we're building. Those three big manufacturers have been hit so hard. You're looking at delays from the manufacturers of up to 400 days.
Okay.
So I was at Eurobike last month, which is a massive bike festival where all the industry gets together and they show you what's coming up for next year. And all of them are saying, bikes are all sold out till 2023.
No way.
So that is from big manufacturers.
Wow.
When you're looking at the likes of, like I was saying, like Look, Walia, Merida, Giant, Scott, Trek, they're all saying the same things. They're all singing the same song. It's like, we cannot get group sets.
Okay. We
can't get group sets, and the group sets that we're buying, we don't know the price of what they're going to be.
Can you explain that? So why the group sets? And on this podcast we've had different people from different industries, and they all talk about either chip shortages or supply chain. How is it related to group sets and that part of the bike?
So if you look at a company like Shimano, so they are the biggest manufacturer of group sets. They manufacture fishing tackle and fishing equipment as well. Okay. It's a massive company, but their design of their supply chain, it's not one factory will make the entire group set. There'll be certain factories in different areas. One will make the brake calipers, one will make the STIs, the shifters, one will make the derailleurs, one will make the wheels. So they're all reliant on all these arms coming into one centralized packaging hub and then sending it out. When one area stops doing it, like if it's your brakes, or if it's your STIs, or whatever it is, if it's a battery manufacturer, that component fails. You've now got a supply chain failure. And when you've got a global demand, and I don't think there's any business kind of advisor that could say to you, you know what, you need to forecast for something that you don't know is going to be there, a potential growth of 400% demand on parts. So they're all sold out of it. The community, as in the cycling community, and the global trend was to get out and get fit because you couldn't go to your gyms. You needed to go out and find running blew up, cycling blew up, outdoor sports went crazy. So indoor trainers, Wahoo kickers, just, there was just global demand that was just unaccounted for. There's no way we could do it. So from a business model, the guys are sitting there going, well, we've got these orders. You would go up, I know my little brother lives in the UK. He went in to go and buy himself an e-bike. And he was told, well, you need to go on the waiting list. Sort of, he's waited a year to get his bike. So that gives you an idea of where it is and what's going on with it. So the price of secondhand bikes during the pandemic went from, you could pick up, prior to pandemic, 1,000, 1,500 dirham secondhand bike, 3,000, 4,000 dirhams for the same bike. Problem is, if a part breaks on it, chance of us finding the spare part, limited. So
it is really affected by demand because of behavior shift of people and adoption of cycling.
A friend of mine has a store in Victoria in Australia, Melbourne, and he rang up. I mean, I've spoke to Stewart about it, and Stewart's like, oh, you've only had a couple of phone calls? Like, other distributors for Look, for, kickers, for, Wahoo, they're all ringing everybody else to sort of say, oh, by the way, do you have?
Okay.
And Nathan, he sort of said to me, if there's anything that you've got, I'll buy it, whatever it is.
Such as the demand in his store.
He did his budget. He bought his bikes for the year, and he sold them all out between January and March.
Okay.
And now he said, my shop looks like I sell multiple brands because it's turned into a sort of repair shop where I've got so many bikes that I've now got them laid out on the floor, and people walk in thinking I've got bikes to sell, and they're looking for the price tags. And it's like, no, that bike's somebody's, it's coming for a service. And then they look around the whole shop, and he says they're all somebody's bike. Yeah. And they're in lockdown. So
still
there's a huge problem there.
But that seems to be like a trend everywhere. What about in Dubai? We see a lot of bike stores. We don't have a big sort of supermarket for bikes, things like that. But has there been enough supply for that demand here in the last year?
So I think we were fortunate enough with our forecast orders, and we're lucky because of the hemisphere that we're in, that our summer is the off season, theoretically, right? There's still the nutcases out there like us that still go out and ride in the summer. But winter, we're in Europe, that's kind of a down season, so we're able to pull stock from there. So from a stock point of view, we're well placed in having stock and able to replace you on a new bike. We've got some stocks for you. We might not have the exact color that you want, but there's going to have to be some flexibility on it. And then looking at the market in Dubai, most stores have got a good supply now, but we're coming into season. So it's what's going to happen throughout the season. You're probably going to find colors become less and less. The range goes a bit smaller. Most of the stores are well established, so they know what their projections are anyway. So they've got that stock. And I think I was reading an article in the UK that was saying the demise of the bike industry, that over pandemic period, everybody had so much more time to go out and ride the bikes and to go out and get fit because they were working from home. Now, everyone's back at their offices. That time frame has now been eroded. So there's less and less riders out on the road. So the industry is kind of coming back to a norm. I wouldn't say there's been a bubble and it's popped. Absolutely not. I don't think that the industry will ever go back down to where it was. There's definitely going to be a return to an inflated normal. So I think that as in the UAE, from an industry point of view, I think we're in a very good place.
Okay, interesting. So just in terms of what you sell, we had someone from Chattels and More last week, and he shocked me and said 50% of what we sell in our furniture store are sofas. We focus on sofas. So is it what one would suspect? Are people normally just buying bikes? You mentioned about so many brands there. Like it seems to be, I'm sure most listeners don't know of those brands, and we won't go into them all, but there's a lot of products, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of accessories, there's a lot of parts. How much is it like when we were growing up, we might buy a bike and that was it? Is that sort of a large majority of your store?
There's a lot of add-ons that go to it. There's always the base level. You go in and you in your mindset, you're going, I need a new bike. I want to go riding. And you can do that. You can come in, buy a bike. It's got some flat pedals on it. Most of the higher end bikes don't come with pedals because then you want your option. You want to put some look pedals on it, which is your clip-in pedals. And then you go, well, now I need some cycling shorts because I've been out riding for a week and I'm getting really numb and it's a bit uncomfortable. Well, your distance has gone up from 5Ks, now you're doing 30Ks. So you need a pair of cycling shorts. Okay, well, what goes with a cycling short? A cycling shirt. Okay, we'll get a nice cycling jersey because it's got some pockets in it. So you can put some, you can put some SIS in the back pockets there. You can put some gels and maybe a bottle of water, your phone. Okay, you need a helmet, right? You've got to have a helmet. Then we need some sunglasses, right? My hands are getting numb. I need some gloves. I need a computer. I need to see where I've gone. I need to be on Strava. Well, you need yourself a Wahoo computer.
And then that's before,
and shoes.
And shoes.
That's before you look at the guy next to you. Who you go out riding with, who's then got the shoes, or he's got a different set of shoes, or he's just bought wheels. And that's where it rolls out.
Wheels.
So, and this is where we, always find it interesting. I know we sort of look at when you buy a bike, buy a frame that is the best frame that you can afford. Because that's something that you can update. You can then, a year later, and it sounds like it's a sales pitch, but I guess for us, the way that, we've always worked is, information is key, and empowering the person that's coming in so that they don't feel like they're being sold to, they're making the decision. But, that wheel set is that next upgrade. It might be 6 months, down the track because your friend's got a set of wheels and he's raving about them. But it might be something that you put a line in the sand in a year's time and say, right, if I get the bug, and I'll come back for those wheels, and then it's the other upgrades that you do to the bike. But at least that frame, you can have for a number of years. So the idea is to spend the money on that and then do the upgrades on top of it.
Yeah. I'm trying to compare it for people who aren't familiar with cycling with another industry, but I can't think of one because
golf.
Okay, but golf you have to pay to play, where cycling is
Absolutely.
open air but similar, So you pay. Well, it's how do you think it's similar?
So I think they're very similar. I was at a new golf course last week, and the exact same question came up. The guy said, "I'm a golfer. I don't know anything about cycling. I need you to put some equipment in my store, but I know nothing about cycling." I said, "Well, let's look at an apple for apple. Cycling, you go out, you get a bike, you'll see yourself progressively getting better, rapidly getting better. So if you're riding 3 times a week, you're going to see yourself go from 5Ks to 30Ks by the end of the month. So but with golf, you're going to look for that little added advantage. And I know very little about golf. So you're going to have different balls do different things. So you're going to want to buy, instead of a 5 dirham golf ball, you're going to want a 50 dirham golf ball. You've got an aluminium shaft, and it, I'm assuming, vibrates harder when you hit the ball or you drive the ball. You want a carbon fiber one, so that's going to be an upgrade, and those are the things that you look and go, similar level. So you got carbon fiber golf shoes as opposed to just normal plastic molded, or leather shoes as opposed to plastic shoes.
Different little cleats in the bottom to hold into the grass. Clothing, cooling clothing. Under Armour,
shoes, sunglasses, hats.
That's
it. So it's a big. So we're talking about a big industry, a big. For people who know, say, other sporting brands, and you mentioned some of them, who are the leaders? Who are the global market leaders in terms of apparel or manufacturing bikes?
So I'd say that, and I don't want to be too biased, obviously, towards our brands now. So we've got some niche brands that do the bikes that are, we work with Look and with Waila. That's our bike brands. Each brand, say that. It's so similar to, say, to like a motor vehicle. You've got your BMWs, your Mercedes, your Audis, and all of them have different levels of expense and quality, and so each one has a different feature towards it. So you got the big manufacturers like your Giant, your Fuji, your Merida, your Scots. Across the board, it's got to be something that appeals to you. But at the end of the day, they will all pretty much have a similar baseline. One might be lighter, one might be a faster climbing bike, one might be slightly more aerodynamic. But at the level, it's going to be a case of you look at for what you want. Do you want a bike that everybody's got, or do you want something that's a little bit more niche and a little bit more personal? Look, as a pedal manufacturer, predominantly, they started off in ski bindings. And they made the first clipless pedal, and that was Greg LeMond won the Tour de France on the first carbon fiber bike. They were the first ones to manufacture the carbon fiber bikes. Paris-Roubaix. So each bike is going to have a bit of a legacy and a history towards it and behind it. I mean, the sport, you look at the Tour de France and you look at years gone by, what those guys rode. I mean, those were miners, those were real proper hard men that would be down in the pits, and they come up and go and ride their bikes and raid the stores, and they're smoking their cigarettes and drinking I think their doping was drinking whiskeys and stuff like that. That would get their endorphins in. And then you look at the big brands. Obviously, Wahoo is relatively new. When I say relatively new to the industry, there's other manufacturers that do similar things, but Wahoo's come onto the market thick and fast in the past 7 years with new computers and new indoor trainers, and that hit the market at the right time, where, especially for a territory like UAE, Dubai, where it's so hot in the summer, but as avid cyclists, you want to still keep on riding, having the fun and the thrill of being outdoors. Get yourself an indoor trainer, which links up to a network, and you can either ride it on your own, or you can ride it on screens. And we do a Wednesday night ride online. Everybody joins in from around the world, and we go and do a ride together. And you feel like you've gone out and ridden with your buddies, but meanwhile, you've been sitting in your pain cave at home riding your bike.
That would be on Zwift or something, isn't it?
Zwift, Full Gas, any of those kind of programs.
The big difference between, I guess, where that's come from and how that's developed is Wahoo came out with just a cycle computer. Then it was the next step. Then it was watches, but their development and their upgrades come in thick and fast. Like just last week, they launched System, which everyone sort of said, Wahoo doesn't have this and Garmin has this, but now they have this system where you can sort of load everything onto, and you can plan your rides, and you can link it up to full gas, and you can ride anywhere. I think it's 10,000 odd places around the globe in full 4K. Like if you had, you know, VR goggles on, you could literally be there, which is a lot different to Swift. But that's the amazing thing, that you could do these rides on this platform and then go, wow, you know, next time I'm there, I'm definitely going to do this ride in real life. So it promotes that sort of tourism and aspect as well for cycling.
So not only has Dubai evolved with roads and people and interests, the cycling industry has fundamentally changed with so many different technologies, so many different products and things like that. Running a business in a community, how do you make choices, or do you respond to the demand of customers? You know, do you stock up for indoor trainers, or how do you stay, you know, terra firma and say, okay, this is our store, this is what we do, and not be tempted to chase all the new trends?
So that comes down to, I know that the brands that we support and we ride with and we run with is the kind of brands that are key to what I grew up with, what Nick grew up with. I'd always ridden with Look Pedals, so when we went over and took on the brand, I knew I had faith in the brand because it's a history brand. It's a brand that's been around for years. We look at a very key example of how a trend can change. The Tour de France was won for the past 2 years by Tadej Pogacar, who rides for UAE Emirates. And you look at the brands that he's riding on now, it's very much like Ronaldo. Everybody wants to wear what Ronaldo's wearing.
Okay.
So Tadej,
what does he wear?
So you look at, there's certain things that become very trendy, and we're very fortunate, and thanks to him for doing so. When Tadej came over, there was a helmet given to His Highness Sheikh Hamdan, and when he put on the helmet, the phone didn't stop ringing because he's put on his Instagram. The phone didn't stop ringing from everybody who wants that brand. I mean, it's the same as Ronaldo comes on and shows something. Now everybody wants that. And it's a case of that brand is now trending incredibly because of, A, it's a fantastic product. It's won the Tour de France, but also an icon like His Highness has worn that item. Now everybody wants it. So for us, picking a brand that we know has got a legacy and a history and a heritage towards it is fundamental. But in saying that, something new comes along, like the LMNT salts that's new into the market.
You brought something.
We brought something to take a look at those.
So this is, explain what this is.
Nick's best with that because it's nutrition and that's his game.
So you haven't even touched on nutrition, but go ahead. So much to talk about.
I guess,
cycling.
So my diet, I sort of run similar to a keto diet. You know, it's a bit of a sort of, some people see it as a fad. It's just a lifestyle. I've been doing it now 10 years. So I don't do any carbs, no rice, no flour, no you know, bread, pasta, nothing like that.
Things that people typically would think you need for endurance sport.
And my sort of pinpoint is, well, we've got a close friend of ours, or a couple of close friends of ours that are type 1 diabetic. You talk to them about carbo loading the night before a race, and they're sort of like, well, that's pointless. Like, do you know about diabetes? And that's that thing that, I guess it's the education around, you know, it's great to lower your carbohydrates, you know, early in the week, and then, you know, the few nights before, take on that carbohydrates because you actually take them on board. But I guess that's my background, so I understand it. Although it's 20 years ago, we're still doing the same thing. So with Element, there's no sugar in there. So for me, this is where I said to Stewart, like, I want this brand, you know, because it's great having other brands like SIS, but I don't, you know, gels are great out there when you need something, but I tend to, you know, do my thing. And, you know, I use them sort of sparingly, but for drink, you know, that salt is important to me. Salt's like the electric wires between your cells. If you don't have sodium, magnesium, potassium in you, then you can forget about like your hydration and your carbo loading the night before. So that's a big thing. And especially out here sweating so much, the major, I mean, you lick your skin, like you taste salt. So everything that you're losing out of your pores is salt. So this is a huge, you know, product and gain for us. And, you know, the guy behind it, Rob Wolf, and Tyler, they're big keto guys, and they talk about keto flu as well, where it's like a lot of the eating that you do on those diets, you don't eat processed food. So you don't tend to have that big salt uptake. So you need to make sure that you're eating salt. And we get sort of fed particular lines about, you know, cholesterol's bad or salt's bad or this is bad. It's not. Like if you actually look at the data, you know, you'll sort of work out what is actually good for you in the right way. You know, you have one ingredient products, whether it's a steak, you know, and then you have a product like, you know, Beyond Burger that's like 26 different products in there. And that's an industrial product. You know, I'm for
plant-based.
Yeah, I'm for eating where you actually, you know, farm to plate type thing. You know, the great thing about the UAE, we've got so many farms and, you know, all this sort of developing that, you know, you're not eating these products that have been mass produced on industrial farms. You know, free range, grass fed, you know, is a great way to do it. Or, you know, eat what's right for you and make sure that you're getting the right info and you're not just following some movie out there that claims one thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's great for a few years, but then when you start looking into the data and not taking one side.
It's interesting. So I think, you know, we could have a conversation about so many different parts of the cycling industry, but it's good. But I think the summary is that in Revolution Cycles and with Cycle Safe Dubai, that, you know, I was trying to get at, you know, do you pick one thing? Well, you have to pick everything. You have to be you have to know about nutrition, you know, to be a good trusted consultant or provider for someone who's looking for services around cycling. You have to know about, you know, different types of computers and helmets and shoes and things like that.
You can sell lots of stuff. But the thing for us is making sure that the customer comes back and it's a point of reference. You know, that we're not just spouting something about our products. It's like, okay, well, look, this is the reason behind it. This is why I take what I take. This is why Stewart takes what he takes. And that's when you build up that sort of, you know, base.
It's a trust issue as well.
Okay. That's just your advice.
14 years ago, or, you know, actually not so much with the shop, but when I was talking to Stewart, I was like, well, I want this bike. He's like, no one knows that brand, Nick. Like, that's the hardest sell under the sun. But I have one in Melbourne, so, you know, that was what I went for, and that's what, you know, I knew and loved, but also, you know, rode on look all the time, and, you know, so you have all the equipment, but that's the whole thing. You want to be that hub and that reference point where people feel comfortable asking a question, you know, and not, I guess the big thing is just not feeling silly. They come in, they can ask anything, and they can get the help that they deserve at whatever level they're at, whether or not they're going pro, or if they're just a weekend warrior that just wants to stay healthy and just be mindful of what's going on there.
Be part of a community, like-minded people that want to go out, just go for a ride. And there's those different variations. You get the once-a-week rider who just wants to go out and enjoys the Friday ride, getting into the bunch. He's got 3 or 4 of his mates that he knows from the group, wants to go for a ride in there. He's never wanting to ride the Tour de France. I mean, 99% of us are never going to do that. But if there's somebody out there that does it, well done to you. But it's something we do it for our own personal reason. And Nick touched on something, saying that somebody doesn't want to come into Revolution and ask a question and feel like, it is always daunting. Like if I was to want to get into golfing, it would feel daunting because I don't know anything about it. And I'd feel that I'm walking into a new world, and it's kind of, what's a stupid question? And, you know, for me, no question is a stupid question. It's just an unanswered question. So if somebody comes in and says, you know, I'm feeling really flat on the bike, is that normal? Yeah, sure. Well, what are you drinking? I'm just having water. Well, what water are you drinking? Well, it's one out of the big bottles. Well, you need to change that. I mean, it's not just a push on a brand. There's a reason why we drink Monviso water. Well, what additives are you putting into your water? Well, nothing. What are you eating the night before? You know? And we have to have a good base knowledge for pretty much everything. You know, we need to know a good solid information for somebody who comes in who's a diabetic, somebody who's allergic to nuts, who's allergic to different aspects. We need to know that we can answer their questions and you're not going to feel stupid about it. You don't feel that you're threatened by asking the question you want to know the answer to.
Yeah, because it's kind of a lifestyle, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's about your body and your health as well. So
and it's also got to be fun. The biggest thing is it's got to be fun. You've got to enjoy it. If it becomes a slog, you're never going to do it again.
Okay, I'm getting the nod from the producer, but I have two questions. One is around, you mentioned both Highnesses, Sheikh Hamdan, Sheikh Mohammed, who has often been seen on his bike, but Expo recently. And also the great story, again, we could talk about at length, which is the Team Emirates and the Tour de France. But when you speak to colleagues around the world, in Australia and Europe, what's the perception of the UAE and cycling? It must have changed.
Oh, yeah.
And in what way do you see this?
So I got married a number of years ago now, and part of what I wanted to do was actually have a ride the morning of, which I wasn't allowed. You know my wife. But she said you can go riding the day before, but just be very careful. And so my mates came over and we had a ride out in the desert because they heard so much about it.
You got married in Dubai, and
got married in Dubai, and they'd heard so much about it and seen all the photos, and Facebook was great back then in initial days, but they were just like, wow, there's nothing out there. But it's the same thing about riding next to a beach. The ocean doesn't change, and people sort of say it gets boring. You go, wow, you can ride up at Hatta and all these places.
True.
And I think it's not, Dubai isn't the brunch scene, the party scene that people sort of see when they come over. I know that there was always the thing that it was a Middle East, so we were like other countries where there was conflict happening and everything like that. And it amazes me when you hear those sort of things. And then at the same time, they sort of talk about brunch, and you go, well, those both things couldn't happen together.
Yeah.
Dubai is an amazing place. I love living here. I miss, living on a farm of 1,400 hectares, back home, and the green. But Dubai is amazing, and we are well sort of grounded in here. Thick roots. With everything that we do.
To give you an idea of a perception that will probably hit home to some people, love him, hate him. We had a ride with Lance Armstrong last year, and we were out in the middle of the desert. Now, here's somebody, sportsman of note, done his bad, done his good, whatever he's doing, your viewpoint of him. The comment is this, that he has ridden around the world. So he, of all people, knows what is a wow factor. We were out in the desert, riding in the desert, and he looked around and he went, you have a cycle track in the middle of the desert. And he looked around and he goes, who has this?
Really?
Who has this? And he was blown away. He was just, this is wow. So from that kind of level to, your mum and dad going out for a ride, Nick's dad comes over from Australia, gets to ride down the desert, it still wows him.
So it bodes well for the future. The perception isn't just here, that's getting spoken about elsewhere in the world.
Absolutely.
Our next sort of big goal is definitely, Dubai becoming a sort of cycle city, or one of the UAE cycle cities.
Amazing.
Melbourne's won it, a couple of times. I'm proud of that, but I would love to, have Dubai.
Well, that's the target,
There's an awards. There's
the Copenhagenized list.
Okay.
And that's one of the goals from the royal family side. They've said that's what they want. They want to be on the Copenhagenized list, which is the best bike cities in the world. And I'm working with the guys. Working with the guys on that for direction on what can be done and what we want as commuters and what we want as riders. That's on the cards, and that it's come from the top. It's definitely going to happen. When that vision is there, when the boss says he wants it, it's going to happen.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, guys, for sharing your story. So if people want to get involved, how do they find Cycle Safe Dubai? How do they find Revolution Cycles? Where are you based, and how do they get in touch?
So Cycle Safe Dubai is, as it sort of reads, Cycle Safe Dubai on Instagram, and then www.cyclesafedubai.com for the website. And the rides are there, memberships there, all of that sort of information.
Okay.
For Revolution Cycles, you can find us online, revolutioncycles.ae, or the website is rcdxb.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, we're all over the place. Just type in Revolution Cycles Dubai or Cycling Dubai, you'll find us, for sure.
And during the week, you're based up in Motor City?
Based in Motor City. Revolution Cycles is now stuck in an amazing place right on the Dubai Autodrome. So we've got an incredible view when there's events and races go on. We've got a nice balcony to look over it. And ample parking. Pop in.
Perfect. Well, Stewart, Nick, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having us.
And follow your story in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.